Hey guys, VaulSC here. Hope that you're having a good week. Today we're going to go through my first game of Conquest: The Last Army of Kings since the recent patch that came out, overhauling Wardrun and the Nords. Of course, this matchup was going to be between 100 Kingdoms and Dweghom, so very minor updates to those two factions, but we're still going to be running into a few of the new little bits and pieces that have come out for it. I'll be playing against a local guy called Andy, who is actually borrowing my miniatures for this game and playing a list that I wrote for him. He's relatively new and assembling his own army as we speak. So this bat rap's going to look like I'm playing against myself, but there is another human being piloting the opposite faction, so it's going to be a really close game. Really keen to show you guys what's what with it. First up, the scenario we're going to be playing is a bulwark. Sorry, this is Breakout, excuse me. Totally different mission. 3 zones through the middle, and the central one has a marker, like an objective marker, which is friendly to each player on either side. So you've got to remove your opponent's marker before capturing it, and preferably keeping your own one alive so your opponent can't capture it. And the value of each of these circles depends on the time of the game. Like at the start of the game, there are bonus point for the side ones, and then it's the bonus 2 points for the center ones during the middle of the game. Very fitting. And 2 for the Warlord. Of course, against 100 Kingdoms who have 2 Warlords, it's only scored once, bear in mind. So onto the lists that we're going to be running. I'll just go through my one first. If you've recently watched my video about the upcoming changes, I'm running something pretty close to, if not exactly the same as what I was talking about the other day. So because Olefant's Roar is just ever so slightly less expensive to come by with the Priory Commander no longer needing to spend the 15 points on Long Lineage, playing the big unit of Crimson Tower Knights, I think because you can afford so many screening units, it's nice to have a massive hammer that can deal with just about any unit that your opponent is going to come up with, and I think that's very important. Ashen Dawn's still very, very good for what they do, their points, even with attacks 5, 260 points. The Blessed every turn is just really worthwhile, you know, in this kind of list where you've already got the Priory Commander. Imperial Officer, he's probably the newest of the bunch. I'm running him in the Steel Legion, so we're going to add those 2, brace for impact on your feet. Steel Legion, I think you can put a standard bearer on them, but for 20 points on the minimum small unit, I don't think it's really worth it. You'd want to put on the Drill Master if you're going for like 5 of them or 6 of them in a big block. Now the Hunter Cadre are new. This is the big buff to 100 Kingdoms. These guys have flank. They get Vanguard from the Imperial Officer, and they are medium now, which is a big deal because at speed 6, movement 6, march 6, what do you call it? They can come on 18 inches onto the board or 19 with your standard bearer and start scoring as of turn 2, which allows 100 Kingdoms to stay in the game in terms of the points and just set up some shooting right from the get-go. Turn 3, you're already piling on the damage into them with range shots. I think one build I'd like to try is the Imperial Officer in the Hunter Cadre with marksmanship and maybe Eye of Achilles. I have given that a go before, but for now, this is what we're going with. Are Steel Legion better than Men-at-Arms? Not 100% sure. I will be experimenting. And the Chapter Mage, just filling up the list with more small units. I will add that there has been a rules change with how the Supremacy works. So ordinarily you'd get +1 or -1 to your roll if you have fewer cards than your opponent. That doesn't actually matter anymore. It's purely about which player lost the Supremacy roll in the previous turn. I don't really like that change. I think that it benefits some factions more than others, and especially makes city-states very, very good because they are already out-activating you in terms of having card advantage with lots of chariots in the strategic stack. And now, you know, they're going to have the advantage 50% of the time, aren't they? So that's kind of annoying to me that they did that. I don't know why they wanted to bring in that system. I really don't. So Mage, just go and kiss farewell School of Fire. I sometimes consider School of Air, but with the Mercenary Crossbowmen having been nerfed to range 16, I don't really feel that's the best option anymore. Alright, so this list my opponent's playing, I wrote it myself, Steelshaper, Warlord, just to benefit from the 4 casters farming up the special points for the rerolls, or not the rerolls, the auto passes. Couldn't afford any gear from him, and honestly none of the gear is particularly good. I can't really think of anything there that he really, really wants. And just really running the regiments that, you know, I have available that are painted. Kerawegh still great with the Tenacious, either in the Berserkers or the Initiates. I prefer the Initiates just for a nice brick there, which helps to cover the Fireforged and act as a front line. And the sorcerers are running fire here. I think that magma is also the really good choice, and if you're playing the points farm list, sometimes magma is better just for being able to build up more tokens right from the start of the game. So hold warriors are a little bit more useful now. So turn 2, they can sort of just march on 15, 16 inches and score. And we have the automata with attack 6 now, making them a little bit better for close combat. So shall we get into this game? What have we here? So Conquest, let me find my little game list. There we are, just setting up for game day. Might make this cam a little bit smaller. There we are. We've also got the Spies versus Wadroon going on the other table. So there's the bulwark. You can see the two objectives through the center with the 2 side zones there. And forests and hills. I'm really happy with my new forest terrain that I spent a while building on my week off. So, sending in a small group of Mercenary Crossbowmen to begin the game. My opponent following up with the Flame Berserkers. And then his unit of Ballistae with the Tempered Sorcerer going through the exact center of the table. So that's where we end up with turn 1, that position right there. Turn 2, bringing in the Mage. She can go first since she's not going to be in range of anything, so just trying to stall until we can get everything else on the board. And, of course, using the Vanguard and the Hunter Cadre, who are all there for turn 2 with flank. So, my opponent moving up to get a few shots off on that objective to try and free that up for scoring later. The Flame Berserkers rushing towards me on my side of the table to try and axe down some of my shooters. We then have, speaking of shooters, the other unit, Mercenary Crossbowmen, coming over to the hill opposite the Flame Berserkers, just trying to stay out of March charge range, really, is the game here. We then have the Fireforged coming in through behind the Flame Berserkers with the Steelshaper in them, and that is just heading for the gap between that building and the central objective with the objective markers. I am bringing in the Mage with the Men-at-Arms. I feel like the Men-at-Arms are going to be a little bit better at taking on the Flame Berserkers because they have defense 3, so they're going to be able to shrug off some of the attacks, and the Mage can hopefully make the difference with her Kiss Farewell and her fire spells. And the Flame Berserkers look like they're going to be a little bit too far away to receive the tokens for automatically passing defense rolls and the spell interference, if they jump over to my side of the table here. So, opponent bringing on the Hellbringer Sorcerer to the extreme right-hand flank. I think this is a little bit of a mistake. It's not a terrible play because you can double march the Drake in the next turn and absolutely fry those crossbowmen with the Fireball spell. But in the long run, the Drake is going to get charged by something unless it is screened off by the Fireforged or the Initiate. So I think the better play to make is just to be patient, bring this creature in behind the Ballistae in this particular case, and just wait and use it in the midfield to get the long bomb spells and the gun from the dragon in the long run. On the opposite side, I'm charging over here with the Hunter Cadre. Note that they are very good against the dragon because they've got Fiend Hunter, but I don't really like my chances against that Drake because, of course, it's going to take more than one activation of shooting to take down, and it's going to be fireballing me in the meantime, which will do a lot of damage to the Hunter Cadre. So we're going to go for the objective on the right. Speaking of which, he's bringing in his Hold Warriors, which have Vanguard, as we talked about, so they are rushing up into the forest just to give them a bit of cover against the Hunter Cadre. And then my other unit of Hunter Cadre coming in the exact dead center there. I decided to take that position. Again, they're not going to be very useful against the Hellbringer Drake, but they're still going to get their rerolls against the Automata and the Steelforged later on. And this position allows me to counter-attack the Flame Berserkers if he decides to move this unit into the forest or ultimately into combat with my Men-at-Arms here. These Hunter Cadre can just turn around and shoot them in the flank, which is going to be awesome. Or if the Flame Berserkers go after the Hunter Cadre for some reason, then the other units of crossbows can shoot into combat. And of course, the Hunter Cadre are quite good at close combat to begin with. All right, so this looks to be the end of turn 2, pretty much. We have most of our early game regiments on the board. So for turn 3, I'll be running with Eric Schure's card first, the Imperial Officer, and then slowly working our way through to the Order of Ashen Dawn, which was the automatic pick for turn 3. We're going to be seeing the Crimson Tower Knights coming on turn 4. So, opponent shows up with a Steelforged directly behind his Hold Warriors. This is good for me because it means that I can shoot over the Hold Warriors at the Steelforged with my Hunter Cadre, getting rerolls, which is quite helpful. Slightly more in-focus photo of them there. These guys through the center, they are just moving up a little bit and shooting at the Flame Berserkers in the distant background, inflicting a few wounds from long range there. Speaking of Flame Berserkers, they decided to go for the long bomb, marching and then charging into this unit, which is already activated. Again, this is quite good here for 100 Kingdoms, because having already activated the Hunter Cadre, I'm not having to take the Aura of Death hits. Aura of Death having changed now to do a set number of hits for the regiment rather than per stand, which is interesting. So it's only Aura of Death 4, but you will take those hits regardless of whether they have 3 stands remaining or just 1. Now, having moved directly into my territory, I can, of course, punish this move by shooting at him with the Crossbowmen, which does a lot of damage from close range. I feel like some players make this mistake of feeling the need to activate things a bit too quickly and sort of send in their regiments into your line one by one. It's not really the best way to do it. You want to have your stuff attacking your opponent's stuff while you have other regiments nearby to them so that they can benefit from the position that's created by that aggressive action. So, Hold Warriors moving on to the zone. They want to get the points. They're too far away for me to effectively charge with the Hunter Cadre. And, of course, they've got reasonable armor, so they're not going to take too much damage. And this is going to start him scoring very early on. On the other side, we've got the Mage and her men-at-arms really just finding an opportunity to clear out those Flame Berserkers you see to the extreme right-hand side there. Inferno Automata also taking this flank. They will be up against the Hunter Cadre, and the Hunter Cadre, of course, do get the rerolls against the Inferno Automata, but against 3 regiments, it looks like I'm going to be losing them if I go for that circular objective zone. Right, so instead of pushing forward with our light troops, the Mercenary Crossbowmen here against that right-handed flank, we're moving in with the Imperial Officer, looking very good there with his contingent of Steel Legion. Love those miniatures, really happy with the paintwork as well. So this will be better because they have Bastion. They're going to shrug off the Ballistae Firebolts a little bit more effectively than everything else can here. And if I can get them either to the center or that right-hand side, I might be able to make some progress there with their big swords. We have the Chapter Mage reforming with the Men-at-Arms. The Men-at-Arms don't really need to do anything here. They just need to protect the Mage. So by reforming, they get her into line of sight of the Flame Berserkers. She can then shoot her Kiss Farewell ranged weapon with the unit and then cast her Fireball into the Flame Berserkers. I feel like Flame Berserkers ought to be immune to fire, but you know they're not. They do take damages from fire darts and fireballs and whatnot. So she is able to expertly dispense with most of the remaining Flame Berserkers right there. On this side, my opponent sees that I've been very cagey, just keeping my other unit of crossbows just out of range here from the dragons, so he is going to just double march onto the objective zone. It is, however, going to mean that he's going to be scoring a lot earlier than me, so going off to an early lead, and this is the stage of the game where the side objectives are worth more points. So on this side, I thought rather than give away my Hunter Cadre is what I'm thinking of, I decided to shoot and then pull back 3 inches with the march without aiming, just to avoid the inevitable rush that we're seeing from the Dweghom, because he's primarily got medium units. He's got like 2 lights and everything else is medium in his army, whereas I'm waiting for a couple of heavy regiments to show up. We then have the Fireforged moving up and deleting my little objective here with some ranged cannons. And the Ashen Dawn marching towards that Drake. Feeling like the Ashen Dawn are a good answer to it. They aren't going to take too much damage from the shooting or the spells. And then if I can tie it up in combat, I'm only going to need 1 or 2 stands worth of Ashen Dawn to eventually clobber it down. And then I can hopefully take over that objective there. So that's what they're trying to do. On this side, we're still gathering our ammunition to finish off the objective you see on the left-hand side. All right, and that is a overview of the table after turn 3. I'll just move my... In fact, I might just turn off the camera so it's a bit easier to see what's going on the table here. So from left to right, you got Ashen Dawn taking on the Dragon, all my range units through the center up against his ones, with a lot of terrain in the way, mind you. On the right-hand flank, he's going to be swarming me over there, but I've now got the backbone of the Steel Legion to try and stem the tide. Going into turn 4 we are at now. I'm bringing in the Crimson Tower Knights, but they're going to come on dead last. I want to see all of his deployments before I commit those troops, because they're my biggest and most expensive unit. Going first, of course, is the Ashen Dawn, so that they can charge the dragon rather than get shot at by the dragon. And they're going to be much better in close combat, because the dragon will be going up against their Blessed in close combat, which is going to be awesome. So winning the roll, we're marching, we're charging, and we're getting to the flank here, which is even better, because that's going to cause him to have to re-roll any morale checks. He has built up a lot of tokens at this point, so starting to spend a few tokens on impact hits and so forth to keep this thing alive. And now he can start hitting me with spells and whack me with the big beast, of course. So that is exactly what he attempts to do with the next activation, just getting the Fire Sorcerer going and stripping a few wounds off the Ashen Dawn already. Over this side, we have the Hunter Cadre nailing the Whole Warriors with a few long-range shots there. Without advancing onto the objective, we're going to leave the Steel Legion to do that most likely. But he is sending in his Inferno Automata with a double march over here, ready to get into a position where he will be able to charge me and quite effectively bang up my Hunter Cadre if he gets the opportunity with an early activation next turn. Through the left-hand side, we now have the crossbows. They are shorter ranged, with only range 16, but I can move up into the hill if I want to and shoot at that dragon while it's locked in close combat with my Ashen Dawn. Over here, the Fireforged, of course, finishing off that objective. I feel like we've been finishing it off for 2 turns now, but they do get it eventually. And the Mage, seeing that she's going to be up against the Fireforged, just moving into the forest to get the benefit of the cover, and can fire at them with long-ranged Kiss Farewell and Fire Darts. Up against spell interference, of course. We have the Ballistae able to fire a few shots off against the Steel Legion, which have not activated yet, so they don't have Bastion. So taking a few wounds already from the Ballistae. Speaking of Steel Legion, on the other side of the battlefield, we are using Vanguard to triple march in front of that dragon. He's starting to spend a lot of tokens on that Hellbringer Drake, and the Ashen Dawn are -1 attack thanks to the nerf recently, so if I can't finish it off quickly enough, the Steel Legion will come in to help out, and it will give me an additional scoring unit to take care of that zone, babysitting it while the other regiment goes to the center. So I'm going to be doing that with either the Ashen Dawn or the Steel Legion. Just depends on which regiment takes the most damage. Over here, the Hold Warriors just gapping it into the forest and staying like tiptoed onto the objective, because they feel that they can't inflict any damage here, and if they move forward, they're just going to get charged anyway, so he's just holding back. On this side, I've got another unit of crossbowmen, which aren't really doing very much. They are reforming just behind the Steel Legion here, and firing off a couple of shots long-ranged into the Inferno Automata, although I feel like I'm only getting 1 or 2 stands there, given their shorter range of only 16 now. So then we have the Steelforged just marching up behind the Whole Warriors, using them as a screen, and getting ready to charge into anything that might be wanting to contest this zone later on. Through the center, we have the Hunter Cadre firing at the Fireforged. They are quite heavily armored at Defense 4, including the shield, but all these shots with AP1 helpful to strip down a few wounds for later. And then finally we have the Kerawegh arriving with his 6 stands of initiates. My thought is that you really want to bring these guys on ASAP for turn 2 and march directly towards one of the objectives that you feel you'll be camping for the entire game, and then put your Hellbringer Drake behind them or the Fireforged like nearby to them, and that's your castle you set up. At this point, they're coming on a little bit too late. So then we have the Steelforged just using Bastion and march charging into these Hold Warriors. Now that everything around them is activated, that's going to allow me to effectively try for the initiative next turn and chop up the Hold Warriors. But by moving them here, I am able to get a few points by scoring the zone. We then have the massive unit of Crimson Tower getting to the point where they're almost all painted, coming in here behind the Hunter Cadre. I'm realizing it does allow my opponent an opportunity to charge clash with the Inferno Automata into the Hunter Cadre. If they do wipe out the Hunter Cadre, I can then destroy them with the Crimson Tower. What they could do is march, charge, and not clash, meaning that I take a few Aura of Death hits, and then the Hunter Cadre are just sitting there blocking movement through to my Knights, which is not ideal. If that happened, I probably would have to sacrifice the Hunter Cadre by withdrawing and letting them die so the Knights can charge the Inferno Automata and then sweep through the right-hand flank. But I just couldn't bring myself to put them anywhere else. I feel like it is going to be a long game, so I'm just waiting for my opportunity to systematically sort of shoot down his units and pick them off with range and then mop up with the Knights much later. So here we are at the end of turn 4. Ashen Dawn securely beating up the dragon on the left-hand side with the knight with these Steelforged, coming in to finish the job. The center line just holding back, not going to contest that central objective. My opponent's moving the bulk of his forces to it, and the right-hand flank just getting ready to position my Crimson Tower to systematically destroy the Automata and the Steelforged and the Hold Warriors, and then hopefully I'll have both of the side zones to win me the game. So we're going first with the Order of Ashen Dawn to try and kill the Drake before it does any more damage, and then we're going to go last with the Crimson Tower Knights, expecting him to want to try shenanigans with his Automata, and I just want to have that last laugh there to finish off some of his stuff. Okay, so the Ashen Dawn giving this guy a walloping. Bear in mind that they have fewer attacks than they did in the last patch. So given he's spending quite a lot of tokens here to automatically pass armor saves, I think he managed to survive with like 1 wound remaining from this dragon. So over here we've got the Steelforged, and mind you, winning the roll was crucial here because, you know, it went to the Steelforged, it went to the Ashen Dawn, and then to his dragon, and then it comes over to the Steelforged, who can easily kill the Hold Warriors and get Bastion and go straight into the Steelforged behind them. The Steelforged are still going to rip them a new one. It's just that, you know, I want to keep them off the objective for a bit, buy enough time to get the Crimson Tower Knights in later, and that's the idea. So yeah, they are bravely holding the line against the big machines. Again, this has been an amazing turn because it's allowing me to activate all of the units that I want to activate before he activates them, and in this case, we're just going after the Automata with the Hunter Cadre, who also have Fiend Hunter, so they're doing a great job, and they're also clearing the path for the Crimson Tower Knights now. So as you can see here, off in the distance, the Hunter Cadre have reduced the Automata down to just 1 stand left. These archers, the Mercenary Crossbowmen, can fire at that last stand of Automata as well, and it completely clears the path for the Knights later on. In the center, you've got the Ballistae against the other Hunter Cadre, just a bit of a firefight here, which is going to go badly for the Hunter Cadre eventually, but I'm not too concerned about winning the center zone here, because that's where he's concentrated most of his stuff. The Mage doing a little bit more damage, just slowly whittling down the unit of Fireforged at the distance with her Fire Dart and her Kiss Farewell weapon. Over here, the Fireforged trying to get a few counter attacks into the Hunter Cadre as we talked about, but they have lost a stand, so just slightly fewer hits onto them. And another photo of the Mage unleashing some fiery death upon the Fireforged over there. There's lots of fire in these two lists, I'm feeling. And as you can see, the Hunter Cadre having lost a stand now and suffering a few more wounds, I believe, on the next one. Then the Initiates coming in behind his main army here, just a little bit poorly positioned, as we talked about. These guys needed to be at the forefront. They need to be in front of the range units rather than behind them. And it would have been great if they could have gotten to the objective a bit quicker. And you want your Kerawegh on the field generating more tokens for the Tempered Creed, of course. All right, on the left-hand side here, we've got the Mercenary Crossbowmen just turning around and trying to get a few shots, either at the Dragon or the Fireforged. They are just really holding up the rear right now. And Steelforged activating, and as expected, going up to Clash 5, got a bit of cleave going on there, and just inflicting like 13 straight hits onto the Steelforged, which take a number of wounds. They are oblivious, but they get absolutely munched on by these guys. On the other side, the other Steelforged charging in against the Dragon and swinging those big swords and chopping its legs off, so finally dispensing with it. We then have the Steelforged moving around, and the idea here, sorry, I meant to say the Crimson Tower Knights moving around here, they don't need a target right now. They're just setting up a spot where if they need to, they can march charge into the Steelforged and cap that zone, or they can go after the whole Ballistae. Now, they will lose their impact hits entirely if more than half of their stands go through the forest, but because they've got that back rank, if the front 2 stands hit the forest and the right-hand side front stand misses it, and the back 3 are outside of the forest, that will mean that they all do their impact hits according to the rules, unless I've missed something. Right, so here we are at the end of what I believe is turn 5, and I've cleared the left-hand flank, so I'm picking up some points from that. Finally, my opponent's in the center, and the right-hand side, nothing's been collected there. My opponent is well ahead on points, by the way. He's very far ahead, but we're only into, effectively turn 6 now, halfway through the game. So I'll be going with both units of Hunter Cadre first and the Crimson Tower Knights last, looking for that really big hit that they can hopefully use right at the end. So over here, the Hunter Cadre moving onto the zone, just barely clipping it and firing at the Steelforged, of course with their Fiend Hunter ability. They're setting up the trap here because if the Steelforged go after the Hunter Cadre, I can easily annihilate them with the Knights. On the left-hand side, we've got the Fireforged unleashing a broadside into the Steel Legion, doing some damage to them, but it's not going to matter. They can just run off into the zone somewhere. We've then got the Hunter Cadre taking the advantage of the flank of the Fireforged, exposing that, because the flank of the Fireforged have gone after the Steel Legion. We have the Hunter Cadre able to shoot there past the shields and reduce them down to armor 2, effectively. On this side, we have a counter barrage from the Mercenary Crossbowmen, again against the Fireforged off in the distance. And through the center, we have more Ballistae going after the Hunter Cadre and just camping the zone here, just waiting for the opportunity to do a bit more. On the right-hand side, we have another unit of crossbows, just trying to get a bit of action going on here. I don't quite think I managed to get many shots here at range 16, just reforming and turning around and getting a bit closer to the center. We do have the Steelforged in this case going after the Hunter Cadre and really giving them the bash. Unfortunately, it's going to mean that if I lose this regiment, I won't have an additional scoring unit on the side of the table, meaning that to score all the points, the Crimson Tower Knights are going to have to stay on the side and just babysit a zone. But if it does result in a victory, then that's fine, obviously. Mage, continuing to pour in the damage against the Fireforged through the center, just doing it turn after turn after turn. But hilariously, I actually failed the dice roll to successfully cast Fire Dart 3 turns in a row, because she needs 2 or less, given spell interference, and she's only like Wizard 6 or something like that. So I actually failed the roll entirely and did 0 damage for 3 turns in a row, which wasn't really her finest moment. Speaking of which, just moving through here, really just trying to goad them into close combat. That's going to mean that they take a little bit longer to sort of get through the men-at-arms and gives me more time to shoot at them with other stuff. Over here, we have the Initiates reforming into a 2-wide regiment and like 3 or 4 deep, just trying to fit through that gap, but they're still kind of traffic jammed here, so just a little bit of unfortunate positioning from the Dweghom. On this side, the Steel Legion are just going to run away from the Fireforged. They're going to camp in the forest, set up some little bonfires and little teepees and, talk about stories of their last battle, and just camp the zone for the rest of the game and allow the Ashen Dawn to move in to do the work. Speaking of which, they double march right in front of the Fireforged there. I don't really need the Ashen Dawn anymore, but I just need to send them in and create as much of a headache for the dwarves as I can absolutely manage. All right, and of course, as predicted, the ridiculous unit of Crimson Tower Knights moves in there with, 24 impact hits at Clash 4 Brutal 2, and they completely delete the Steelforged as you'd expect them to, and they manage to score this zone. So at the end of turn 6, I have both of the side zones, and he has the central zone, but this is unfortunately the point in the game where the central zone is now worth more points. So he's getting 4 every turn, and I'm getting 4 every turn, and that's not allowing me to catch up. He's also killed my objective, which is not great because that gives you 3 more points. So he's well ahead, and I've only got like 3 or 4 more turns left to try and catch up. So starting with the Order of the Ashen Dawn, and again, Crimson Tower last. It's the way I prefer to play it. He does manage to win the roll finally and get his Fireforged shooting the last wound off one of the stands of the Ashen Dawn there before they can jump into close combat and tie up that Steelshaper for the rest of the game. Just killing characters here is going to be quite important to reduce the number of tokens he can generate every turn. Through the middle, he's still at the Ballistae, able to shoot down a few more of these Hunter Cadre. The Mage reforming here, she's eventually going to be goading the Initiates to attack her or to charge in herself, but they don't really need to do anything other than just babysit her and allow her to shoot and use Fire Dart, which she is doing eventually, after failing 3 turns in a row, does manage to get a little bit of damage. Still have a couple of stands worth of crossbowmen on the hill over here, so they're continuing to do their work, but very slowly, I might add. Speaking of slowly, we've got the other regiment moving up as well, trying to polish off the Fireforged. It takes so long against their armor. And I've got this unit of Crimson Tower Knights, which can babysit the zone here, and it's slowly going to allow me to win the game, because in the last 2 turns, like turn 9 and 10, it's the side zones are worth more, not the center. But to give us a more of an entertaining game, I decided to turn them around to give me the opportunity to go through the middle. So at the end of turn 7, I think it was, we end up with a situation where I'm just sort of boxing him, and he's got nothing left except for these 3 regiments in the center, and he's very surrounded. So we have the what do you call this guy? The Order of the Ashen Dawn command stand fighting off the Tempered Steelshaper here and eventually crushing him. We have the Tempered Sorcerer dealing with the last of these crossbows, and then reforming to turn around just to defend the zone a bit more effectively against the Knights. The Knights will lose their impact hits going through those trees. Chapter Mage over here, now nothing between her and the Initiates at the top right. So we have the Initiates reforming, just getting ready to counter or just receive a charge from whatever may come, and blocking me from moving on to the objective, which is quite smart. Over here, the Mage, not really taking the bait, she's just going to hang out, doesn't really want to fight toe-to-toe with the Kerawegh. And we still have 1 stand of crossbows left to fire at the flank there, and ignoring the shield of the Initiates. These other guys not so lucky, they're going to have to go directly into the shields and doing very little from this position. So then we have, and look, this is just more of a fun play more than like a tournament winning move here. I decided to leave the zone, so I'm no longer scoring from the side zone, and this unit crashes into the Ballista without doing impact hits. So it's going to take me 2 or 3 turns to actually kill them, and it's going to mean I'm not scoring for the next 2 turns. So this is a game losing, play if I ever saw one, but it's a casual game. Like the match is pretty much in the bag if I just leave the Crimson Tower on that zone. And I just want to point that out. So this is the end of turn 7. We've got the Crimson Tower Knights slowly chewing through the Ballistae, and the Initiates are just camping that zone and keeping me off it. So here is the lineup. We're going to go with the Steel Legion last, Order of the Ashen Dawn first. So over here, Ashen Dawn have charged into the side of the Initiates, and then the Knights here are wiping out the Ballistae and able to go after this objective. Because they're heavy, in the next turn I can attack the objective and do the impact hits on it and a clash, which will wipe it out, but I won't move on to the zone. But it will swing back a few points in my direction. So there you go, that's the end of like turn 9, and when we finally played it out, I didn't even put my cards into a stack. He literally only had like 2 cards, so I played it out in this particular order. You've got the Initiates, which haven't died yet. They're up against 1 stand of Ashen Dawn, and of course the Mage. So just the last few photos here, we joined combat. It didn't really matter. He's still able to score at the end, and I was able to clear the objective. And the end result was actually 29 points to 28. So I think that really illustrated how silly it is to just leave the zone like that in the sake of having fun. But fun is really what it was more about. And it was me that got the 29 points at the end to his 28. Just a nice close game. Although it didn't really feel close from the middle of the game. I felt like if he had kept his Hellbringer Drake behind his Initiates and the Fireforged next to the Initiates and moved them onto the zone and used everything else in his army just to go after one of the other objectives, that could have netted him the win. I have more study to do with both of these factions, but for this particular game day, I did encounter Old Dominion, my first game against them since the recent patch, and I'll be showing you that bat rep later in the week, so do look out for it. All right, thanks guys, it's been fun. Enjoy the rest of your day.